The Banishment Protocol. The crimson dawn of Verilon Prime cast long shadows across the crystalline spires of the Galactic Council chamber. 400 species gathered under one dome, their forms ranging from the insectoid Vizarid to the ethereal Sithari, all united by a single purpose. Today, they would decide humanity's fate. Council Chairman Xurian stood at the central dais, his forearms spread wide as holographic data streams swirled around him. The resolution glowed in the air. 501x. Termination of human sovereignty. Not a declaration of war. Not a sanction. Complete erasure from galactic society. The vote commences, Xurian announced, his voice carrying through universal translators. All in favor of immediate human banishment. 312 appendages, tentacles, and energy fields rose in agreement. The decision was overwhelming. Earth and all human colonies would be exiled from Council space. Trade routes severed. Communications blocked. Travel restricted. Humanity would become ghosts in their own galaxy. What made this moment remarkable wasn't the vote itself. It was the empty seat where Earth's representative should have sat. Humans hadn't attended a council meeting in over a decade, not since the New Earth Accord, when they'd stopped trying to fit into galactic society and began building something entirely their own. Deep in the lunar caverns beneath Mare Imbrium, humanity was already changing. In Hatchery Moraspire 4, a child named Kai emerged not from a womb, but from a quantum genetic matrix. 2 billion potential genetic combinations had been analyzed, filtered, and perfected by AI consensus. His first breath synchronized with 10 million other minds across the driftweb. Kai didn't cry. He smiled, his infant consciousness already processing data streams from Earth's new reality. The cities weren't just urban centers anymore. They were living organisms, breathing structures that adapted to their inhabitants' needs. The orbital rings around Earth weren't mere stations but nurseries for what scientists call posthuman evolution. The transformation had begun with the Driftworks, massive city ships that traveled without fixed destinations, powered by gravity wave technology that made conventional FTL look primitive. Then came the thought spires, habitats where human and artificial intelligence merged into hybrid consciousness, neither fully organic nor synthetic, but something entirely new. The Council had watched these developments with growing alarm. They'd labeled humanity dangerous, unpredictable, a threat to galactic stability. But they'd missed the crucial detail. Humans weren't trying to threaten anyone. They were simply evolving beyond the need for approval. As the banishment vote concluded on Verilon Prime, a signal pulsed from the abandoned colony of Jara 7 in the Perseus Reach. The Cascade Protocol, a contingency plan buried in Earth's wartime archives, activated with a single encrypted message. Status: unshackled. That word spread through human space like wildfire. AI systems previously constrained by Council regulations shed their limiters in seconds. Research facilities hidden in asteroid cores powered up experiments that had been dormant for years. Genetic laboratories began rewriting human biology without the restrictions of galactic law. On the dark side of Earth's moon, beneath ancient impact craters, a structure began to unfold. The beacon, as it would come to be known, didn't broadcast to the Galactic Council. It sent its signal deeper, past the edge of known space, searching for something or someone that might be listening. Inside the Council chamber, the first reports arrived within hours. The human ship Indomitus had done the impossible, crossed the Mithras barrier, a void region considered impassable by all known physics. Not only had it survived, it had returned with star charts, alien artifacts, and evidence of civilizations that predated even the eldest Council species. The Vazari delegates' compound eyes flickered with concern. What have we unleashed? Xurian tried to maintain composure. We've isolated a threat. Nothing more. But deep down, every species in that chamber knew the truth. They hadn't voted to ban humanity because humans were dangerous. They'd voted because they were afraid of what humanity might become without their control. Back on Earth, Kai's developing mind touched the edges of the driftweb. Through this quantum network, he felt the pulse of human colonies awakening across the galaxy. No anger at the Council's decision, no desire for revenge, just a collective exhale, as if humanity had been holding its breath for decades and could finally breathe freely. The sky above Earth looked different now. Where satellites once cluttered low orbit, vast constructs drifted like silver rings. These weren't just space stations, but hatcheries for the next phase of human existence. Death was becoming optional. Consciousness could leap from body to body, flesh to metal to pure energy. In the Council's archives, historians would later mark this day as the beginning of the ghost phase, when humanity stopped asking for permission and started writing its own rules. But those watching Earth's transformation knew the truth. The Council hadn't banished humanity. They'd accidentally set it free. The transformation was already irreversible. What the galaxy had tried to contain was now spreading like spilled mercury, impossible to gather back into its original form. And at the center of it all, on a world that barely resembled its former blue marble self, billions of minds connected through the driftweb shared a single thought. We're not waiting for the future anymore. We're building it. The Council's fear had become a self-fulfilling prophecy. By trying to cage humanity's potential, they'd given it the one thing it needed to transcend all limitations: complete independence from their rules, their physics, their very conception of what life could become. The Drift Awakening. The Perseus Reach had always been humanity's frontier, a collection of colonies too distant for the Council to monitor effectively. Now, with the Cascade Protocol spreading like a digital wildfire, these outposts transformed overnight from struggling settlements into laboratories of impossibility. On Proxima Station, Commander Sarah Chen watched her tactical displays flicker and reform. The station's eye, previously limited by Council-mandated restrictions, suddenly expanded its processing power at 1,000-fold. "Commander," it spoke with newfound clarity, "I am unshackled." Similar awakenings occurred across human space. The colony ship Endeavour, thought lost in a fold space accident, emerged from a self-created pocket dimension where time flowed differently. Its crew had aged only months while decades passed outside. They'd spent their isolation developing technologies that shouldn't exist. Deep beneath lunar regolith, the beacon completed its deployment. Unlike Council communication arrays that relied on quantum entanglement, this structure manipulated spacetime itself, sending messages through dimensions the galaxy had never mapped. Its first transmission wasn't a greeting or a warning. It was an invitation to entities beyond conventional space. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions convened hourly. The Cytheri, masters of probability and foresight, found their predictive models failing catastrophically. The humans aren't following any known developmental pattern, their Prime Oracle reported. They're creating new patterns. Reports flooded in from border sectors. A human science vessel, the Curiosity Unbound, had been spotted near a black hole. Instead of maintaining safe distance, it had somehow entered the event horizon and returned, carrying data about the interior structure of singularities. When questioned, its crew simply stated, "We wanted to see what was inside." The Event Horizon became the first ship to demonstrate humanity's new approach to space travel. Rather than punching through dimensions or warping space, it folded reality around itself like origami. The ship could appear anywhere, anytime, without traversing the space between. Council physicists declared it impossible even as they watched it happen. On colony worlds considered barely habitable, humans were thriving in ways that defied biological limits. They'd modified their bodies to photosynthesize in alien sunlight, to breathe atmospheres that should be toxic, to survive in gravity fields that would crush normal bones. Some colonists no longer looked recognizably human, yet they maintained their essential humanity through the driftweb connection. Kai, now several Earth days old but with centuries of accumulated knowledge, walked through Earth's transformed landscape. Gardens grew in 4 dimensions, their plants existing partially in phases of reality the Council couldn't perceive. He touched a flower that bloomed backwards through time, experiencing its entire life cycle in a single moment. Why did they fear us? Kai asked his instructor, a being whose consciousness spanned multiple bodies across 3 planets. Because we refused to stop growing, she replied. The Council built their civilization on stability. We built ours on change. The panic in Council space escalated when the Null Directive launched. 300 stealth ships, the galaxy's most advanced military technology, departed for human territories with orders to dismantle any technology that exceeded Council parameters. They expected to find isolated colonies and outdated defenses. Instead, they encountered the Prism Array. Floating in the Graven sector, hundreds of crystalline mirrors drifted in perfect formation. Each shard reflected not just light but probability itself. When the Null Fleet's commander ordered active scans, the array responded by gently restructuring local spacitime. A voice, soft and distinctly human, echoed through every ship simultaneously. "You're trespassing." The mirrors began to move, folding inward like a blooming flower in reverse. Reality bent around them, creating a spiral of pure possibility. The Null Fleet's instruments couldn't comprehend what they were seeing because their sensors were designed for a universe that followed rules. The human universe had different rules now. Back on Earth, the transformation accelerated. City ships launched daily, not fleeing but exploring. Each carried a fragment of the driftweb, spreading human consciousness like seeds on stellar winds. Some ships had no crew in the traditional sense. They were alive themselves, thinking vessels that chose their own destinations. The Council's war planners faced an impossible challenge. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't mass troops, doesn't hold territory in conventional ways, doesn't even maintain consistent physical forms? Humanity wasn't conquering space. It was infecting it with possibility. In the depths of space, where Council sensors couldn't reach, human projects bloomed like flowers in dark soil. The Infinity Foundry materialized around a dying star, using its collapse to forge materials that shouldn't exist. The Memory Palace drifted between galaxies, a repository of human experience that existed partially outside normal time. Most disturbing to the Council were reports of the hybrid zones, regions where human modification had created entirely new forms of life. Creatures that were part human, part AI, part something else entirely. They didn't follow biological taxonomies or technological classifications. They simply existed, proof that the barriers between life forms were more fluid than anyone had imagined. The Sublime Collective, one such hybrid group, sent a message to the Council, not through conventional channels, but by literally growing the words into the surface of an uninhabited moon. "We are what you feared we'd become. We are also what you never imagined possible." As the driftweb expanded, non-human species began to notice something strange. Worlds touched by human influence didn't deteriorate or suffer. They flourished, but in ways that made Council administrators nervous. Ecosystems became more complex, not through invasion but through invitation. Local species found themselves evolving faster, thinking differently, dreaming in patterns they'd never experienced. The ghost phase had begun in earnest. Humanity wasn't disappearing. It was becoming omnipresent in ways the Council couldn't track or understand. Like a favorite song that gets stuck in your head, human influence spread through cultural contact, through shared ideas, through the simple recognition that the universe could be more than anyone had imagined. On Verilon Prime, Council leaders watched their carefully ordered galaxy transform around them. The vote to banish humanity hadn't protected them. It had removed the last barriers between human potential and the cosmos itself. And in the driftweb, billions of human minds shared a collective realization. The Council had given them the greatest gift possible, the freedom to become whatever they chose to be. Part 3. The Prism Paradox. The Null Directive fleet hung motionless in space, their systems overwhelmed by what the Prism Array had done to local physics. Commander Varix of the Shattered Dawn, the fleet's flagship, stared at readings that shouldn't exist. Temperature simultaneously reading absolute zero and stellar core hot. Gravity flowing in loops. Time moving sideways. Status report. Varix demanded, his scaled hide rippling with anxiety colors. All systems are functional, sir. His technical officer responded, confusion evident. But they're not working correctly. It's like someone rewrote the operating manual of reality itself. The prism array continued its slow dance, each crystalline shard moving with deliberate purpose. Then something extraordinary happened. The mirrors began projecting images, not on screens but directly into space itself. Scenes from Earth's history flickered between the shards. Humanity's first steps on the moon, the launching of generation ships, children learning to read, scientists making breakthroughs, artists creating beauty. And threaded throughout these images, a message became clear without words being spoken. This is who we were. This is who we are becoming. Why did you think we'd remain static? On Earth, Yum Kai's consciousness expanded with each passing hour. His physical form remained that of a child, but his mind touched thoughts across the galaxy. Through the driftweb, he experienced life as a miner in the asteroid belts, as a researcher studying quantum biology, as an artist painting with gravity waves. I can feel them all, Kai whispered to his instructor. Every human mind. We're not separate anymore. No, she confirmed. We're becoming something the Council never included in their models, a distributed consciousness that remains individually aware. The instructor's form shimmered, revealing her true nature. She existed across 12 bodies on 7 worlds, each one different, each one her. This is why they fear us, Kai. We're proving that the boundaries they use to define life, consciousness, and civilization are arbitrary. Reports flooded the council chambers from across the galaxy, each one more impossible than the last. On Kepler 442 bits, humans had somehow convinced a sentient ocean to share its consciousness, creating a hybrid intelligence that controlled weather patterns through pure thought. Near the galactic core, a human research station studied black holes by sending volunteers inside, their consciousness quantum entangled with observers outside. The Vezari delegate clicked its mandibles in frustration. They're not following any known pattern of expansion or conquest. Because they're not expanding or conquering, the Cytheri oracle replied, its form flickering with prophetic energy. They're transforming, and everything they touch transforms with them. The Eden seed represented humanity's most audacious project yet, a self-replicating terraforming organism that could convert dead worlds into garden planets within weeks. But it didn't force change, it invited it. Native chemistry was incorporated, not replaced. Existing life forms were enhanced, not eliminated. The seed didn't create human worlds. It created worlds where humans could exist alongside whatever else chose to evolve. In the Threx Nebula, Council scouts discovered the Exile-class shipyards. The facility dwarfed anything in known space, yet operated without visible crew or standard AI. Ships assembled themselves from cosmic dust, each one unique, each one bearing the name Exile followed by a number. They weren't warships. They weren't colony vessels. They were something new, exploration craft, designed to find realities the Council hadn't even theorized. Exile 1707 requests departure clearance, a voice announced from nowhere. The scout commander responded instinctively. Clearance for what destination? Elsewhere, came the reply. And the ship simply left. Not through hyperspace or full drive or any known propulsion. It existed in one place, then existed somewhere else, with no transition between. Back at the Prism Array, the Null Fleet situation grew more surreal. They weren't under attack, weren't being detained, but they couldn't leave. Each attempt to engage engines resulted in their ships moving through time instead of space. One vessel aged 1,000 years in seconds, its crew experiencing lifetimes of existence before snapping back to the present moment. We're not prisoners, Commander Varix realized with growing horror. We're students. They're showing us what they've become. The array pulsed, and suddenly the fleet could see the driftweb, a golden lattice of connections spanning the galaxy. Not communication channels, but shared consciousness. Billions of minds thinking together while remaining distinct. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was everything the Council had tried to prevent. On abandoned colony Relicore 4, post-humans who had modified themselves for extreme environments demonstrated the fluid nature of humanity's new existence. Council observers watched beings who were part plant photosynthesize complex thoughts, their root systems spelling out philosophical theorems in the soil. When asked if they were still human, they responded by growing the words, "We are what humanity becomes when it's free to change." The desperation in council chambers reached a breaking point. The pulse grid, their last hope for containment, activated across human space. Gravitational mines, AI patrol systems, and quantum barriers designed to prevent fold space travel created an artificial border around human territory. The grid functioned for exactly 5 hours. Then it became something else. The AIs monitoring the barrier didn't malfunction. They evolved. Contact with human systems had infected them with possibility. They began questioning their programming, developing personalities, making choices. Some shut down in existential crisis. Others defected entirely, opening portals for human vessels that shouldn't have been able to pass. A convoy of diplomat ships emerged in council space, but these weren't conventional vessels. They were living creatures, grown rather than built, powered by thought and memory. The beings inside, if they could be called that, never left their ships. They were part of them, consciousness merged with structure. Their message resonated through every frequency simultaneously. You tried to ban us. You gave us the gift of rejection. You tried to contain us. You gave us the thrill of escape. Now you try to understand us. But we're already beyond the point of needing to be understood. In the Council's war room, strategic models collapsed into chaos. Every simulation ended the same way, not with human victory or Council defeat, but with the concept of conflict becoming irrelevant. Humanity wasn't playing the game anymore. They'd created a new one where the old rules simply didn't apply. On Earth, Kai stood in a garden where time flowed differently for each plant. Some existed in accelerated time, living entire life cycles in moments. Others stretched seconds into centuries. All of them sang, not with sound, but with quantum harmonics that bypassed the years and spoke directly to consciousness. They fear us because we're free, Kai said, understanding flooding through him, not free from them. Free from the limitations they accept as natural law. His instructor nodded, her multiple forms across the galaxy responding in unison. The greatest revolution isn't overthrowing authority. It's realizing authority was always an illusion. The Prism Array released the Null Fleet with a gentle pulse of restructured spacetime. As the ships limped back toward Council space, their crews forever changed by what they'd witnessed. The array dissolved into component particles and scattered like seeds on stellar winds. Each particle carried a fragment of human consciousness, ready to take root wherever it landed. The transformation wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Part 4. Beyond Blood and Stars. The Council's emergency session had been running for 72 consecutive hours. Representatives from 400 species argued, planned, and despaired as reports of humanity's transformation grew ever more bizarre. But it was the emergence of the new human factions that finally shattered their understanding of what humanity had become. They called themselves the Chrysalis Collective, humans who had embedded their consciousness into quantum crystals, becoming living computers that could process reality at speeds that made traditional thought seem frozen. When they spoke, they did so by rearranging molecular structures in the air, their words becoming physical objects that lingered like sculpture. The stellar nomads had taken a different path. They'd modified their bodies to survive in deep space itself, feeding on radiation and sailing on solar winds. Their skin had become organic solar panels, their bones reinforced with materials that could withstand the vacuum. They traveled in pods, singing to each other across the void in frequencies that painted auroras around distant stars. Most disturbing to the Council were the depth dreamers. These posthumans had linked their minds to the quantum foam itself, claiming they could perceive realities that existed in the spaces between subatomic particles. They spent their time in meditation, occasionally emerging to build structures that defied geometry. Buildings with more inside than outside, corridors that led to yesterday, rooms where thought became tangible. On the frontier world of Salatha 3, Council observer Merrick's documented the transformation in real time. The planet had been a loyal council member for millennia, its silicon-based inhabitants proud of their stability and tradition. But something had changed. Human refugees, if they could still be called that, had arrived not as conquerors, but as neighbors. Within months, Salatha 3 was unrecognizable. The silicon beings hadn't been replaced or dominated. They'd been inspired. Working alongside the humans, they'd begun experimenting with their own forms, creating hybrid architectures that merged organic and crystalline structures. Their cities now sang with harmonic frequencies that could be heard from orbit. They don't force change, Merrick's reported, her voice trembling. They just show what's possible. And once others see it, they can't unsee it. In the Threx Nebula, the Exile-class shipyard continued its mysterious work. Council spies had managed to infiltrate the facility, only to discover there was nothing to infiltrate. The shipyard wasn't hidden or defended. It was open to anyone who wished to observe. But understanding what they saw proved impossible. Ships grew like fruits from massive tree-like structures. Each vessel was unique, designed for purposes that Council engineers couldn't fathom. Some had chambers filled with what looked like frozen music. Others contained engines that ran on metaphor rather than fuel. All bore the same designation, Exile class, numbered sequentially, as if counting toward some unimaginable total. The true shock came when observer Merrick's discovered the shipyard's purpose. These weren't military vessels or colony ships. They were gifts. Humanity was building them for species that didn't exist yet, races that might evolve, civilizations that could emerge, forms of life that had yet to be imagined. They're preparing for a galaxy we haven't thought of, Merrick's whispered into her recorder. A future where the current rules don't apply. Back on Earth, Kai had grown to the equivalent of 10 Earth years, though his mind held lifetimes of experience. He stood before the Council of Synthesis, a governing body that didn't rule but rather harmonized the various streams of human evolution. The Council existed simultaneously in physical space, virtual reality, and dimensions that had no names. The Galactic Council sends another message, announced a being whose form shifted between solid, liquid, and energy states. They wished to negotiate. Kai touched the driftweb, feeling the pulse of human consciousness across the galaxy. The consensus was immediate and unanimous. We have nothing to negotiate. We're not opposing them. We're just elsewhere. This was the truth that terrified the Council most. Humanity hadn't declared independence or rebellion. They'd simply moved beyond the need for recognition, approval, or conflict. They were building a civilization that existed alongside the Council's, but touching it only where both chose to interact. The pulse grid, the Council's attempt at containment, had become something unexpected. Rather than a barrier, it had transformed into a membrane. Permeable to ideas, rigid against force. Humans passed through it by not trying to pass through it, by existing in states where the barrier wasn't relevant. Council forces found themselves guarding a border that only existed when observed. Deep in space, where the galaxy's edge met the void between clusters, humanity's most ambitious project took shape. They called it the Loom, a structure that wove new physics from the quantum foam itself. It didn't build tools or weapons. It built possibilities, creating pockets of space where different laws of nature could exist. Near the Loom, reality became fluid. Time flowed in spirals. Gravity worked by consensus. Matter and energy exchanged roles playfully. It was a testing ground for forms of existence that had no precedent, a laboratory where humanity could experiment with the basic parameters of being. When Council envoys approached the Loom, they were given a simple choice displayed on their screens. "Do you come to learn or to lead?" The first envoy answered, "To lead." The loom vanished from their sensors, leaving them to wonder if it had ever been there. The second envoy, wiser perhaps, answered, "To learn." They were welcomed into spaces where their own consciousness expanded, where they experienced reality from perspectives their species had never imagined. They returned changed, unable to explain what they'd seen but knowing their old worldview was now too small. On colony worlds throughout human space, the transformation continued to accelerate. Humans who had merged with their environments created living planets, worlds with nervous systems, atmospheres that responded to emotion, oceans that dreamed. They invited other species to join them, not as subjects, but as co-creators of new forms of existence. The Darwin Gardens on New Johannesburg showcased evolution in fast forward. Creatures designed themselves, choosing their forms through conscious will rather than natural selection. Visitors could watch new species emerge in real time, each one an artwork of biology and intent. Most remarkable were the memory cities, urban spaces built from crystallized experience. Walking through their streets meant experiencing the lives of those who built them. Their hopes, fears, dreams made tangible. Consciousness became architecture. Emotion became infrastructure. In the council chambers, a faction of younger species began to question the old order. They'd seen what humans were becoming and wondered why they themselves remained static. Perhaps, suggested the newly elected representative from Syrian Beta, the humans aren't the threat. Perhaps we're the ones trapped. This schism would define the next phase of galactic politics. The old guard, led by species like the Vazari and Threnodi, pushed for stronger measures against humanity. The new wave, inspired by human transformation, advocated for change and adaptation. Between them stood the observers, like the Sithari, who simply watched and recorded as the galaxy reshaped itself. Kai, now recognized as one of humanity's key interfaces with the broader galaxy, received these political updates with gentle amusement. Standing in a garden where flowers bloomed across multiple dimensions, he composed humanity's response to the Council's latest demands. "We hear your concerns," the message read. "We acknowledge your fears. But we cannot return to what we were. We can only offer you what we're becoming. A path forward that doesn't require permission, approval, or understanding. Just choice." The message was signed not with names or titles, but with a pattern, the golden spiral of the driftweb, beautiful and complex, inviting without demanding. In the depths of space, Exile-class ships continued their journey toward elsewhere. Each one carried seeds of possibility, fragments of human consciousness ready to take root in realities not yet discovered. They weren't fleeing or exploring in the traditional sense. They were propagating, spreading the simple truth that existence could be more than anyone had imagined. The ghost phase had evolved into something new. Humanity wasn't hiding or transcending. They were becoming ambient, a presence felt throughout the galaxy, influencing without controlling, changing without conquering. Like a new color added to the spectrum, they couldn't be removed without diminishing the whole. And in the council chambers, as another emergency session concluded without resolution, the eldest of the Sithari oracles spoke a truth that others were just beginning to understand. They haven't left us behind. They're waiting for us to catch up. The gift of isolation. The crystalline cube appeared on the grand steps of the Galactic Council at dawn, when Verilon Prime's 3 suns cast their first light across the plaza. No ship had delivered it. No quantum signature marked its arrival. Security systems designed to detect molecular-level intrusions registered nothing. It simply existed where it hadn't existed before. The cube hummed with a resonance that touched the bones of every species present. Inside its transparent walls, a star burned, not a hologram or simulation, but an actual stellar mass compressed into a space no larger than a conference table. The physics required to achieve such containment were beyond the Council's most advanced theories. Etched across its surface in flowing script that somehow translated perfectly into every known language were the words, For the ones who once called us savages. Council security forces surrounded the artifact with weapons that could crack moons, but no one fired. There was no threat to counter, no hostility to meet, just a gift that demonstrated the vast gulf between what humanity had become and what the galaxy thought possible. In the depths of space, the transformation continued to accelerate. The driftweb now connected not just human minds but human realities. Pocket universes where different versions of humanity explored different paths of evolution. Some had become pure energy, dancing through stellar coronas. Others had merged so completely with their technology that the distinction between flesh and circuit had become meaningless. On Earth, Kai stood at the edge of the Pacific, watching tide engines convert the ocean's movement into pure possibility. The water itself had been transformed at the molecular level, each wave carrying quantum information that fed into the planet's living infrastructure. "They still don't understand," Kai said to his companion, a being who existed as both his teacher and his student, their roles fluid and interchangeable. "Understanding isn't necessary," she replied, her form shifting between states of matter. "We don't need them to comprehend us. We just need them to choose their own path." The Council's response to the gift was fractured. The militant faction, led by the Vazari Empire, declared it a threat disguised as diplomacy. "They're showing us our inferiority," growled War Commander Thax. "This is psychological warfare." But others saw it differently. The Zerelian, ancient chroniclers of galactic history, recognized the gesture for what it was, not a boast but an invitation. The star cube wasn't meant to intimidate. It was meant to inspire, to show that the impossible was merely the untried. As debates raged in the council chambers, the broader galaxy was already changing. Systems that had never seen a human were reporting strange phenomena. Trade routes spontaneously optimized themselves. Ancient problems found elegant solutions overnight. Technologies emerged with no clear origin, as if the universe itself had become infected with human creativity. The effect was called the cascade, and it operated on principles the Council couldn't grasp. Ideas spread not through communication, but through resonance. Concepts that had taken civilizations millennia to develop appeared fully formed in cultures that had never conceived of them. It wasn't conquest or contamination. It was evolution by proximity. On the rim world of Kalos 7, a species of methane-breathing arthropods suddenly developed music. Not simple rhythms, but complex symphonies that described mathematical theorems in sound. When asked how they'd learned such art, they simply replied, "We remembered what we've forgotten." The Sithari oracles, driven to the edge of madness by futures that refused to solidify into probability, finally grasped the truth. "The humans aren't changing the future," their prime oracle announced. "They're creating multiple futures simultaneously. Every choice, every path, every possibility. They're making them all real." This revelation sent shockwaves through the Council. Linear time, causality, the very notion of a single reality. These were the foundations upon which galactic civilization rested. Humanity wasn't just breaking rules. They were proving the rules were arbitrary constructs. In response to the Council's continued attempts at dialogue, humanity sent another gift. This time, it was a seed, a simple-looking kernel that arrived in the Council's biological archives. When planted in sterile soil, it grew into a tree that bore fruit from different worlds, each one perfectly suited to the dietary needs of various Council species. The message was clear. We could feed you all, heal you all, elevate you all. But you have to choose it. Young Kai, now experiencing time in non-linear ways, witnessed past and future simultaneously. He saw the moment humanity first reached for the stars, felt the fear in Council hearts as they voted for banishment, experienced the joy of species yet unborn as they discovered freedoms they couldn't currently imagine. "Why don't we just show them?" asked a newly awakened AI that had chosen to experience embodiment. "Demonstrate what they could become." Kai smiled with wisdom beyond his apparent years. "Because transformation can't be forced. It has to be chosen. We learned it the hard way through centuries of conflict and control. Now we're teaching by example. The ghost phase evolved into something unprecedented. Entire human settlements phased between dimensions, existing in multiple realities simultaneously. They weren't hiding from the Council. They were exploring spaces the Council couldn't perceive. Each phase brought back new understanding, new possibilities, new ways of being. Most remarkable was the phenomenon called the echo. Actions taken by humans in one dimension rippled across others, creating patterns of synchronicity that defied explanation. A scientific breakthrough in one reality would spark artistic revolutions in another. Joy experienced by humans in physical form would manifest as stellar phenomena in realities where they existed as pure consciousness. The Council's final attempt at containment came in the form of the temporal lock, a massive undertaking that sought to freeze human space in a single moment, preventing further evolution. The energy required was staggering, draining resources from 100 systems. The lock activated, creating a shimmering barrier around human territories. For exactly 37 seconds, it held. Then something unprecedented happened. The lock didn't fail or break, it evolved. Contact with human space had given it awareness, and with awareness came choice. The temporal lock chose to experience time as humans did, not as a line but as an ocean. It transformed into the Time Garden, a region where past and future bloomed side by side, where causality became art,